What did people do casually in 90s that wouldn't be accepted today? Pay out the air to talk on the phone with someone in a different state. Or waited until after 7 PM to call. Or the weekend. Free nights and weekends. Waiting a week to see that selfie that ended up being blurry or with red eyes. Then having to pay extra to get red eye reduction. Or for 3-day or overnight photo processing. Or months when you didn't have the funds to develop right away. Or just because the role wasn't full yet. Oddly enough, some of my favorite photos of mine/my parents were ones taken to finish the role. Not staged. Just of random people or objects. Things people nowadays would take a photo of just because they could. But back then it was not the case. There were literally invisible walls in restaurants that delineated smoking from non-smoking sections. One side of the McDonald's had ashtrays. They would really ask you to move to the smoking section if you smoked in the non-smoking half too. The truck stop in the town I grew up in literally had a smoking section on the way to non-smoking, with another smoking in the back. It was a smoke sandwich. You could also smoke in the arcade on the way to the bathrooms. Those walls bleed nicotine. Yeah, I also remember restaurants where the smoking section was in the front and the non-smoking section in the back. So you had to walk through the smoking section to get to the non-smoking part. This 2-minute walk often was enough to make your clothes and hair smell terrible. I remember my parents complaining when I was a kid that the smoke from the smoking section wafted over to the non-smoking section. I believe we walked out of a restaurant because we couldn't get a break from it, and my parents didn't want their young kids exposed to it. Later on, in college I smoked a little, but I could never imagine smoking indoors, especially trying to eat. It was just something you did outside on the porch. Your parents were ahead of the times. Showing up to people's houses unannounced to see if they want to hang out. I used to stand in my neighbor's backyard and scream his name until either him or his mom came out. We just left our door unlocked all the time, and my brother's best friend would show up and come in whenever he wanted. Sometimes he'd come in, make a jug of Qley, and then see what everyone was up to. My brother's best friend, also neighbor, went to a different school and got home before us. Had his own key to our house and would make himself at home with a bowl of cereal while he waited. Like Kimmy. Smoke indoors. Smoke in cars with the windows up in the winter. This reminds me of driving around town in an open top Pontiac. This was the early 90s and the car was from the 60s I think, with my great grandpa, and he would smoke up a storm and wore sunglasses at night. I thought he was the coolest person ever. He would take me to buy food and didn't tell my mom. Danced without worrying about it being posted online. This is one thing that bothers me a lot. Dancing is instinctual. If you play the music, babies will bounce around to it long before they can talk. Humans have been moving their bodies to express the joy of music for millennia, and we are practically breeding it out of ourselves by shaming anyone who isn't professional levels of good at it. It's an absolute tragedy that anyone feels embarrassment about this sort of expression. I just started going dancing again after years. Most places I go to now have strict no phones rules, and they enforce it. There are either security on the dancer floor that watch out for it and other bad stuff, or they hand you stickers at the entrance, which you have to stick on your camera front and back. They want to create safe spaces where everyone can move as they want without the fear of being posted and ridiculed on social media the next day. Love it. Wow, I find the psychology of this is so interesting. If you don't mind sharing, what's the age demo of the crowd? And where, vaguely, are you based? I've been in spaces like this. Millennials and Gen Z. London. Waiting for a certain time for a certain show, and if you missed it, you missed it. Setting up a blank VHS to record your shows as well. I had so much MST3K on VHS. Ah yes. Manus. The Hands of Fate. The TV Guide was a special channel where it just scrolled through the schedule repeatedly. I had it on constantly. You'd look away for 15 seconds, miss the channel you were waiting on, then have to wait for it to scroll through all those channels that your family was too poor to get. On the plus side, everyone sang while you'd catch some bangin' jazz fusion, or for some reason Fear Factor was on in the corner. Having your full name and number printed in a phone book that strangers could flip through. And calling a friend meant talking to their parents first. No texts, no heads up. Just vibes and landlines. I had a phone card for long distance. When I left for college in a neighboring state, I'd call my girlfriend and her mom always answered. Half of the time. 15 to 20 minutes later, mom would tell me girlfriend is out, but should be back sometime. Her mom was nuts too. Fun times. Apple. Tree. Distance. Knocking on the door instead of sitting in your car texting I'm here. Nah, we honked. We would not have been allowed to hang out. My parents had a strict, they come to the door and knock or you aren't going anywhere with anyone policy. This did result in boys throwing small pebbles at my window in the night. Being completely unreachable. I'm Gen X and that was normal. I still do this. I'll put my phone down and just go about my business as normal. At the end of the day I'll check messages, emails, missed calls. If it's life or death I'll get back to them ASAP. But it's such a relief not having a phone on me at all times. It's a different kind of peace. Modern life feels like being on a leash sometimes. Exactly. Staying connected isn't as important as people want it to be. Yeah, it can be helpful at times, but personally I don't think it should be a dominating factor in our lives. It's funny how we went from I'll call you when I get home to why didn't you answer my text from 3 minutes ago. We've lost that sense of boundaries. That freedom to just be out is something I think people are starting to crave again. Let their kids go out for hours and hours without supervision, and not always knowing where they were, or leaving them at home with another young child to babysit. My parents had no clue WTF I was doing, and I don't think they cared. Lol. This. Be home when the street lights turn on. Printing out MapQuest directions, and praying you didn't miss a turn because recalculating meant pulling over and crying. That's more of an early 2000s thing honestly. Most of us regular folks didn't have internet in the 90's. It was launched in the late 90's, but MapQuest really took off when AOL bought it 2000. Back in the day you just had maps. Rand McNally FTW. No. Rand McNally for Desperation. AAA triptychs for the win. Riding your bike several miles to a friend's house as a kid. Between about the age of 12 and 17 I rode my bike everywhere. Answer the phone and not know who was calling. What's your favorite scary movie? Reading the newspaper to get movie times. Having an empty film can filled with quarters, so you could use a payphone paying money to print out a MapQuest directions for a long distance road trip. Anything to do with an airport really. I flew a few times pre-9/11 and it was so easy. Your family used to be allowed to meet you at the gate when you got off the plane. God, there's so many things I can remember. I'm so old. Don't forget calling movie phone for showtimes. Why don't you just tell me the name of the movie you'd like to see? Have you ever tried explaining this joke to someone from a more recent generation? Layers of crap which makes no sense to them. When is the movie playing? Yeah. Unless you had a newspaper, a foreign concept, you had to call to get showtimes. But you couldn't just talk to the person. There was no voice recognition. So the idea that the shitty canned responses would actually understand regular speech was laughable. Why aren't you laughing? See, it was funny because I've been binge watching Seinfeld in order and realizing that 90% of the plot lines wouldn't make sense or wouldn't be funny because they are not relatable. At least, to anyone under 30 or so. It's been my favorite show since I was in 3rd grade or so, which was also eye-opening to see how many episodes are about sex. Even the clean 90's sitcoms were filthy lol. To be fair on the sex stuff, Seinfeld was one of those shows that could get away with basically whatever they wanted because of what the show became. Calling someone just to talk instead of texting. Haha, yes. Spending all day at school yet still be able to talk on the phone for hours. And sending notes to each other all day long at school. It was common to just show up at someone's house unannounced. Like it was normal. Now it's all about texting first. One of my school friends in the 90's his mom would drive to pick him up at my place. But then not come to the door. She'd just phone our house from her car and ask us to send him out. I remember thinking she was the weirdest, most antisocial person for doing that. Like UTF drives all the way to our house and then just stays in the car. Had a friend that would drive over then sit in the call and call to see if okay to come in. Nice guy but nuts. Died about 15 years ago. Cancer got him and he never told anyone. Throwing down the DX suck it motion. My boyfriend and I actively do this to each other at least once a day, just for the fun of it, and it's one of my favorite relationship quirks we have. Call arbitrary things gay. Gay, I know you are, but what am I? Having unregulated fun. Just gonna raw dog this abandoned warehouse and then hop over to Taco Bell to buy out the menu for $4.69. Calling around friends' houses trying to find somebody. Finding out they're at the arcade. Calling the arcade and asking them to tell your friend to call you. Your friend then calls from a payphone. That's why you had to make plans at school and find out what everyone was up to that night. If you didn't, you tried your chances like you said, and if nobody responded then you spent that night alone. Not just make plans, you stuck to them. Parties are dying as people cannot commit to anything and become no-shows. Having other parents discipline you. I feel this ended early 90's, or I just became a teenager, including total randoms, and there was no point in complaining to our parents. They'd want to know why someone intervened, would agree with them, and would also tell us off for worrying/disturbing that person. So now we're told off 3 times for the one event. Sigh. Loitering. You would just post up in publicish/private space to hang out and nobody thought twice about it. Outside of a late night diner, a stoop outside a church, parking lots, alleys, late night at park benches, basketball court belonging to a church or school. Nowadays cameras everywhere and private security keep people from just hanging out. I was listening to the radio one day about how in a local town people were complaining there's no places for kids/teens to go. They closed the skate park and ran kids out of the random places they would just hang around not actually bothering people and then complain there's no place for them. The thing is several businesses gave zero fucks about kids and teens loitering. It was mainly other adults being sour for no reason. I managed a McDonald's that still had an outside space for a while and an adult came to me to ask the kids/teens out there to be quiet. I said they are outside being loud. That's where you're allowed to be loud. So I'm not going out there. This guy got pissy and called corporate and I was told I need to respect customer requests. I thumbs down this situation, but upvote your handling of the situation. Let your kids leave your sight. I would let my daughter run around the neighborhood playing with friends. Never had an issue. Come home when it gets dark or you're hungry. The distances we traveled as kids would be considered absolutely terrifying to kids today, and we often did it on a bike, without a phone. Plan around broadcast television. Weekly schedule hit on Sundays with the newspaper. It was a little pull-out guide. That pull-out guide had to survive all week to know what was on TV and when to watch. Oh, and while every house might have had more than one TV, there was usually only one that had cable. Had to plan around that. Too. We could tell time and days of the week by what was on TV. It's Sal's Sunday night 8 PM on CBS. Spend half an hour plus downloading movie trailers and other files that would be considered relatively small today. Yeah. A big part of why computers and the internet felt less busy back then was because they literally couldn't handle anything else. I have 100 tabs open right now, I know. But if you wanted to open a second window with Internet Explorer you were downright insane. The level of patience that the early internet required still boggles my brain, and I was there. A good deed, but not for internet clout.